Hello, Facebook. Welcome to Put What Where, Why and How. I am your professional creative organizer, Mike Raish. And today's topic is, what is creativity? First and foremost, creativity is dynamic. So it's so many things. It means so many things. It's used for so many things. So I am just going to rattle off all the things, as much as I know, on a basic level of what creativity is and how it's used. So, the definition of creativity, which there are many, and I'm not going with Webster's on this. This is by creativity professionals and theorists. So, and I'd actually love to read you my definition of creativity, which I totally didn't prepare, but if I can remember it, I'm going to try to reiterate it right now. But all definitions generally have something to do with novelty and usefulness. So creativity, when you come up with creative products, something has to be new and it has to be useful in order for it to be considered productive and creative. So the definition that I've created, if I'm remembering it correctly, is creativity is the process of which two or more things are combined to create a new thing that serves some kind of purpose to at least the entity that created it. So that's my definition. What else is creativity? Creativity is a way of life, and it's not reserved for artists and eccentric people. Everybody has creativity and the ability to be creative and the ability to learn and become better at creativity. Alexis is saying it sounds like biochemistry, which I'm not surprised because creativity probably sounds like most things. Because creativity is embedded inside of almost everything. Any process that you learn, like sales training, or communication. There's even creativity in math. Like, creativity is inside every industry. And if you don't have creativity, it's likely that business will fail. Very infrequently will a lack of creativity produce positive results. There are certainly plenty of cases where, like, if the tried and true works, as they say, don't reinvent the wheel, then use it by all means. We'd like to recycle things that are already useful, but that's also how creativity works, is you take something that's already been useful, and then you make something new and more useful out of said thing. I agree. Alexis, without creativity, the struggle is real. And I just want to talk about, I am officially a professor at GCC, Genesee Community College. I drive an hour to Albion, New York, every Monday and Wednesday to teach young minds. I actually have one person that's about 50, but everyone else is like fresh out of high school. And all of my circles tend to be creative circles. A lot of my friends, a lot of people I surround myself with, tend to already have a creative, productive mindset, including Megan, who just gave me a heart. Thanks, Megan. So I'm surrounded by creativity so much that it's almost like a vacuum cleaner where, like, it's going for so long that the buzz becomes white noise and you don't even realize that I'm doing it. And I'm starting to teach this class, and I come in and I now have to make a lot of adjustments to my approach because my students are not experienced in creativity, and I don't have a lot of experience working with people, at least large groups of people, that all don't have the creative bug, the ability to problem solve, the ability to take something uncomfortable and make it comfortable, the ability to take something out of chaos and bring order. And I just learned there's a type of learning called rote learning, rote, R-O-T-E, just learning it, so I might have to re-look it up, but rote learning, which is the idea that you basically just learn, memorize, and regurgitate, as opposed to the creative mindset, which is learn, analyze, reassess, and reimagine, and then regurgitate. But not regurgitate because it's now a totally new idea and concept that you've formulated into your own version and whatnot. So creativity is basically the process of learning. I mean, it's not only that, but in learning is creativity, because you are finding questions and problems and then you are answering them. And once you answer the question, you've then learned whatever the answer is. And that's creativity on a very basic level. And hey, that's science. Yes, it is science. And actually, we study the science of creativity. So in the process of studying creativity, we're using science to study it. And we're using creativity to study creativity. So it's a lot wrapped up into one. What else is creativity? I want to talk a little bit more about the power of having a creative mindset, which I describe to my students as the ability to slice through life more simply. So with a creative mindset, when you come across a roadblock or a challenge or something that's just simply unexpected, creativity then pops in, and instead of just simply being surprised, frustrated, and shocked and not able to do things, you can assess the situation, find out what the priorities are in terms of what needs to be changed. Then you go about figuring out how you're going to go about changing those things, and then you change them. And then you get to create the space or the environment or the situation or the product, and you don't have control over everything, but you do have control over your own creativity, and you can get better at it, and you can practice, and you can solve problems. And there's a way to go about that. So just going to talk about a couple of rules, or guidelines, I should say, because creativity has a lot to do with breaking the rules and being limitless. First of all, when you come across a situation that is a challenge, a problem, or an opportunity, you first want to make sure you're getting to the core of that thing. So you're not solving the wrong problem or addressing the wrong challenge. But when you find a problem, sometimes the problem you find is actually a symptom of a much deeper problem. So in creativity, you need to dig deeper until you get to the core of the problem. Just like a weed, you have to weed it from the roots. If you just chop off the top of the weed will grow back and continue to be a problem. So getting to the roots of the problem is first and foremost, or the challenge or opportunity. Second, once you've gotten to the core of the problem, which is so important, because if you miss the problem, then you're solving the wrong one, and then you're off on a journey that's not going to do a whole lot for you. So you've found the problem, you've got the challenge, you've defined it, and it's in a form of which you can answer, which, aside, helpful tip when you're trying to solve a problem, phrasing it in a way that gives you the potential to answer a question is going to be way more helpful than a lot of other forms. This I can give you an example of. So let's say I'm having some challenges engaging my students because they're all introverts and I want to make sure that they're participating. So the statement, or I could complain and be like, my students aren't participating. But that's a period, that's a sentence. I'm not problem solving anything, I'm just going, Turn it around, rephrase it, look at it as, what could I possibly do to better engage my students and ensure that they're participating that benefits them? That was a really, really detailed thing, and I probably should have made it simpler, but I've phrased it in a way that allows me to answer the question. And notice that I have it be kind of an open-ended question. So I'm asking, what are all of the ways that I can engage my students? I'm not asking, what's the one thing that I can do? Although starting with one thing is helpful because you want to make sure that you're not tackling too much at once. But you want to make sure you're phrasing it so that you can answer. And then when you answer, you want to make sure that you're seeing all of your resources and all of your options and coming up with as many ideas as possible. It is proven that quality ideas come from a quantity of ideas. And generally, if you stretch the divergent process, coming up with as many ideas as possible, generally the last third, the third of your ideas are generally going to be the most workable. Because the first third are the obvious, easy kind of answers that may have gotten old or could be improved on. The second third tends to be kind of wild and weird and strange. And then the third tends to be kind of like the polished new ideas. Again, guidelines, not always the case, but that's the general process of when you're coming up with answers to the question that you found. Then, once you figured out the problem and come up with all of the options, then you need to evaluate, which is so important, the ability to evaluate, finding out what takes priority, what's going to be the most effective, what can be built upon. So you're looking at all of your ideas and you're selecting the best ones. If it makes it easier, you can cluster ideas together. So say you have a whole bunch of ideas that, let's go back to the example of engaging students, I just have a bunch of ideas that happen to be activities specifically. So I can gather all the activity ideas and put them into one category. And then I could take another, the way that I go about grading things. Like, let's say I had a couple of options on how I grade things to kind of motivate them to do things. So now I have a category of using grading to engage my students. So I'm clustering them, and then I'm going to kind of whittle those down even further. And then once I've filtered through all of these crazy quantity of ideas, then I've got the best ones. Then the last step is, well, it's not quite the last step. There's one step that sometimes gets skipped over, which is development. And that is to take the idea that you are like, yes, this is it. And then you evaluate it again. You evaluate it, you talk about what's good, where the opportunities are, and then you go through the process again and try to fix those opportunities on a basic level. Once you've gotten that down, you made your idea super, super shiny, and you've evaluated the risk involved in implementing it, then you go ahead and implement it. And that may entail a lot of things. You might have to bring in a team. You might have to do some soul searching, depending on what your problem is and what your idea is. So that is the creative process that we humans use. Find the problem, come up with all the ideas, pick the best idea, shine the idea, implement the idea. That's all of it, for the most part. Creativity is even bigger and crazier than that, though. Creativity speaks to our soul. Creativity in the form of artwork. When somebody makes a work of art and I view that work of art, I am moved because of the energy they put into that artwork. I get to receive some of that energy. So creativity is more than just a practical guideline. And actually, I think more people probably view it as being an emotive thing, but it's also practical. On an even bigger scale, creativity is bigger than us humans as a species. We tend to separate ourselves from a lot of the other life forms on Earth because we have creativity, and that's what's allowed us to kind of evolve. Me able to make tools, and we are able to escape threats and all sorts of stuff. So I'm like reading comments at the same time here. It's beyond our species, even though we thrive because of it. But creativity is built into the nature of all things. Into the tree, the earth, the everything. Like, they don't necessarily go through a thinking process. There's arguments that there might be consciousness behind it, but let's think about a creek or a river or some kind of flowing water. Water is going to just, on a physical realm, it's just going to find the easiest path that it can to follow gravity or whatever, what have you. So it's going to make its way around rocks and whatever. It doesn't, it might stop because it finds a basin and then it sits there and whatever, but I'm just saying, like, it's got its own flow. It figures it out in a way. And the trees, they need to create new leaves to receive the energy from the sun and the oxygen, and it creates new branches and it creates new roots. So it is utilizing creativity to create new things that becomes useful for itself. So creativity is everywhere. We have semantics, words, communication, that complicates, and we have feelings, very intense feelings, which complicates the creative process. Nature, on the other hand, tends to do it very naturally. It just simply grows, and it seems to know best all the time, and it always wins. So that's creativity in a nutshell. Problem solving, slicing through life. It's a way of thinking, it's a way of life. It is the nature of all things. It's beautiful, it's spiritual, it's productive. It's literally everything. The semantics around it, we might call it different things, but it is everything. Utilizing creativity will help you get through the biggest challenges in life, and creativity is the process that I use with my clients when I help them organize. It's quite literally when we talked about gathering ideas and coming up with what's best and prioritizing and all that jazz, we group things that are like things. We put them in a category. We go, okay, you've got all of this stuff inside of this category. How much do you need to keep? And then where can we put it? So there's like so much creativity in professional organizing, which is why I'm so glad I found this industry. It's a very tangible way to teach people and help people through the creative process. So, thanks for tuning in. Creativity is amazing. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions about creativity, or anything for that matter, because creativity is dynamic and huge, and you're allowed to have your own thoughts about it, and I would love to chat. All right, friends, until next time. Yes. I love using trees as a metaphor. The tree of life. I mean, that's why it's the tree of life. Because the tree is so easily symbolic for all things and creativity and life itself. So yes, love the tree. All right. Love you all. Be creative.